Well, Rakshit Ranjana Marcellus was telling us that corporate balance sheets are good, but consumption has been, the household spending and income has been on the weaker side, and that's partly on account of poor job creation. So who better than to talk about the job creation prospects than Naukri? Now, every month they come out with a JobSpeak Index. And here are the latest numbers. They show that white-collar hiring for the festive months of October and November are up 6%. But in the month of November, if you bifurcate it, October and November together, 6%. But just beyond November, the jobs are up close to about 2%. Also, an important takeaway is that there was no rise in job opportunities for the freshers, for professionals with experience of 0 to 3 years. So to talk more about it, we have Pawan Goyal, the Chief Business Officer at Naukri.com. Thank you very much, Pawan, for joining in. This is Reema here. So get to the numbers, right? This 6% jump in October and November, is it a real pickup in demand, or is it a function of low base? Because in October and November of last year, I remember hiring was down 12% on a year-on-year basis.
So it's clearly growth from last year, but if you say look at October, November of 23, it was also coming off of the unprecedented peaks we saw in 22, which was driven by resignation wave. So if you take a long-term view, this is actually a real pickup in job. Also, if you take another cut at it, some of the great resignation wave was driven a lot by IT, and over the last 2 years, the mix has changed from IT and non-IT, and there's a lot more on the non-IT side. So the non-IT side of the economy, that has been powering the growth over the last year or two. So if you look at some of the non-IT industries, they've done pretty well in October and November. So for example, oil and natural gas growing by about 16%, 14%. If you look at real estate in October, November, it's 10%. Pharma, FMCG, 7-odd%. So all those non-IT part of economy, which did not really have a high base in 22. So it's a real pickup in that part of the business.
So, does that explain the decline that we saw in IT, 7% in November? Because earlier it was 6% up in October. September saw growth as well. So, is it because of a base effect that we saw that impact? Is it a one-off? Or is this a trend that you're seeing going forward as well?
So, if you take sort of a 6-month view on IT, the first few months of this fiscal year, it was a consistent, it was a decline. So gradually, IT year on year has started picking up. Now, while IT year on year, if you take a 6-month view, it is trending positive. It is still not near the previous peak. And because, as I said, previous peak was driven by resignation wave. Now, the question which is there often in people's mind is IT slowdown over? Are we back to growth phase? While the October plus November is flat year on year, I think that expectation we have is that it's actually beginning to change, and October, November is always a tricky month to look at because of festivities. But from the platform activity trend lines that we've typically seen, you see IT actually in a growth phase is what we sense.
Okay, so IT in a growth phase, but just out of curiosity, how much lower is the IT JobSpeak Index compared to its peak?
I don't have that number offhand with me, but it's substantial. The peak was, I think, in the 4,500 range, and now it is in the 3,000 some range. So it's now when the resignation wave happened, it was not necessarily net new job creation, but at that time there was significant musical chair going on. The attrition rates for every company was very high. So JobSpeak does get influenced by rate of hiring as well, and not just net new job creation. So that's how you should moderate the peak numbers.
Got it. What about retail? Retail continues to be subdued, -1% in October, -12% in November. And these are supposed to be the festive months. Has that happened before, where retail has been negative in a festive month?
Good question. I don't have data on that. But yes, retail is a surprising element for us as well. That usually picks up, if I remember right, in October during the festivities time. I want to another question. I think you mentioned at the beginning, fresher hiring is down, but there's some color to that. fresher hiring is down because again of IT effect. But if you take non-IT, fresher hiring in non-IT is picking up. If you look at some of the architecture, facilities management, and things of those kinds, those sectors, fresher hiring is up in those sectors.
Okay, all right. Last question before we let you go. First, what are the early trends that we are seeing in December so far? It's early, of course, 9-10 days, but is there a trend that we are seeing? And what's the urban versus rural hiring trend that we are seeing?
So I cannot comment on the early trends because it's, as you know, it's an unpublished price sensitive information. But and let me comment on some of the other dimension, urban versus rural. I think Odisha, one would have not normally thought as a high growth state. But if you look at October plus November, Odisha is at 33%. Okay. The next is two set of states which are growing very well in October, November are Rajasthan and Madhya Pradesh. So Odisha or Rajasthan, Madhya Pradesh, they don't have the top 6 metros among them. So it's the second tier of cities, which is where the growth is. Okay. Now, I don't. If you the non-metro cities, by and large, are growing at a faster rate than the metro cities. Okay. Now, the rural part, I think I would get reflected in non-metro the cities, but I don't have a rural versus urban split otherwise.
Okay. All right, Pawan, thank you so much for joining in today and giving us all those details and the trends that we are seeing in different industries when it comes to hiring as well. Time for a short break. We get you excerpts of our